Well, China won the EV war way back in 2000. By 2020, as China was putting its play into final phase, the Western car manufacturers were starting to meet in secret behind closed doors to decide how to join forces and fight the EU and UK government mandates. And in 2025, China won. The secret is not cheap labour or government subsidies. It goes so much deeper it will astound you. This is Dave Takes It On. I'm Dave. This is a really deep dive into what China did and how our car manufacturing industry shot itself in the foot and the head. We got to think back to 2020, while the West was still busy arguing about whether electric cars really were the future and how to join forces to beat those EU and UK EV mandates. The race had, for all intents and purposes, already been won, and the West had lost. And they didn't even know it was all over. There wasn't a single finish line or a dramatic photo finish. Instead, it was a series of quiet, strategic moves that happened while the rest of the world was looking the other way. Now, in this video, we're unpacking the critical moments that handed China the EV crown and what it means for the car you might be driving tomorrow. Well, this isn't a story about one company outsmarting another. It's a story of a grand national strategy versus a slow, gradual adjustment, of total commitment versus cautious baby steps. By 2020, China had put a system in place designed not just to compete in the electric vehicle market, but to completely dominate it. Meanwhile, Europe and the UK were still figuring out the rules of the game. The results of that difference are now impossible to miss, and they're reshaping the entire global auto industry. To understand how we got here, we need to look at three key decisions that arguably sealed the West's fate. Well, for years, China had never had much of a car industry. In fact, relatively few people even owned cars. But as the West poured billions into China as a cheap source of labour, building factories for them with brands like Nike, Dyson, Apple, and then the Western car giants coming in, VW, Mercedes, Porsche. So the peasants deserted the peasant lifestyle, headed to the cities and the new factories, and they became buyers with their newfound wealth. They got richer, and they wanted cars of their own. Well, somebody who deserved several medals and cash bonuses calculated that to start their own car industry, China would take several decades, just as the Japanese had done in the 60s and 70s. And here was the decider. They calculated that in a couple of decades, nobody would be driving around in fossil fuel cars, burning fuel any longer. Everybody would be driving EVs. They therefore simply skipped the ICE, internal combustion engine stage, and just went straight to batteries and electric motors, EVs. Well, to the West, we saw that China was just throwing obscene, unsustainable amounts of cash at a problem that they thought didn't even exist, EVs. And to be fair, they were. From 2009 to 2023, estimates suggest China's total support for the sector reached a jaw-dropping $230.9 billion. By the way, we in the West bailed out General Motors and Chrysler and gave other ludicrous, lucrative government contracts to others, totaling approaching half of that. Pot, kettle black. But focusing only on the money misses the real genius of the plan. Policy known as the dual credit system. Think of it this way. Europe and the UK governments used a very large stick to force us to clean up our transport pollution. They set draconian CO2 emission targets, and if a car maker's fleet was too polluting, on average, they levied a massive fine. It's all stick. This encouraged or forced them to sell just enough EVs to balance out their ever larger and ever more profitable huge gas guzzlers. But it didn't force a real change in their business. They simply kept on making what had made the most profit for them. It was all about compliance. Now, China, on the other hand, used a stick and a carrot, creating a whole new internal market. They had serious pollution problems of their own, mainly from the Western factories pouring out smoke and pollution that would not be allowed back in their home countries. They also saw the peasants starting to buy their own cars, and they shuddered with the thought of the pollution that would result if 1 billion of them all decided to drive polluting ICE cars. The dual credit policy, which was in full swing by 2020, did two things. First, it also set increasing, challenging, draconian even fuel consumption targets. This dissuaded them from just making more ICE cars. But the crucial second part was it mandated that every automaker had to earn a certain number of new energy vehicle, NEV, credits. Those credits requirements got tougher and tougher every year, with even more aggressive targets proposed in the later years. If a legacy automaker like Volkswagen couldn't produce enough NEVs to meet its credit quota, it had two simple choices: pay a hefty penalty to China, or buy credits from a company that had a surplus. And who had extra credits to sell? Well, many claim they all went to Tesla, and these credits were all that kept them afloat. No. In fact, huge sums of money went to buy credits from Chinese companies that had already gone all in on EVs like NIO and increasingly BYD. Well, this masterstroke created a mandatory market for EV production. Suddenly, building EVs in China wasn't really an option anymore. It was a necessity. It forced every single major automaker to invest in making electric cars inside China, and it funneled money directly from traditional ICE car companies to those EV specialists. While Western governments were mostly focused on consumer rebates, China was rewiring the entire auto industry from the inside out. Well, China's second brilliant move was realising that winning the EV race wasn't just about the car. It was about everything that supports the car. While Western countries focused on making cars cheaper to buy, China was playing a much bigger game. They now wanted to win the West's reputation for quality, and they aimed for total control over the entire supply chain. Remember those car factories that moved to China for cheap labour, joint ventures? Well, they had something that was even more valuable than the investment. They had decades of experience building cars to very high standards, and they were masters in the JIT. That's the just-in-time. It's a worldwide supply chain. They wanted both and simply took them. I suspect half the Chinese workers in the Giga Shanghai Tesla factory, when it opened, were paid spies just learning all they could. Well, the heart of any EV, obviously, is the battery, and China set out to own that space totally. This wasn't just about building giant battery factories from companies like CATL. It was about controlling the raw materials that go into them. Chinese firms secured mining rights for lithium, cobalt, all over the world, then built the refineries to process them. By the time those chemicals got to a battery factory in China, the most valuable parts of the supply chain were already under Chinese control. The West didn't even fully understand yet that they needed them. They were convinced they could just add them to their existing supply chains and just buy all they needed. That was what they had developed for decades. Well, this had two huge consequences. First, it made Chinese batteries way cheaper for Chinese EV factories. By 2025, average battery packs had dropped in China below $100 per kilowatt hour. It had started at about $800. And there's a clear path to the industry's holy grail of getting it below $80 per kilowatt hour. At that point, many EVs just become cheaper and quicker to build than their ICE counterparts. Well, second, it gave China automakers an almost unbeatable edge in supply security. While Western car makers were scrambling to sign last-minute battery deals at just about any price, companies like BYD, which is also a massive battery maker, had their supply chain locked down at cost. But China didn't stop at the battery. They also launched the biggest charging infrastructure project in history. This wasn't a new idea. In 2020, they'd been working on it for years, copying Tesla. That year, as part of the COVID recovery plan, the government declared charging is a new national infrastructure priority and hit the accelerator on investment. They weren't just putting chargers in big cities, they were building a massive network right across the country, erasing totally range anxiety and making EV ownership a practical choice for hundreds of millions of people. This whole kingdom strategy created a powerful loop. Cheaper batteries meant cheaper cars, more chargers meant more convenience, and guaranteed production mandates meant a flood of new models to choose from. Europe, with its patchwork of national charging plans and its reliance on a supply chain it didn't even own, was left trying to solve a puzzle with, well, half the pieces missing. So, the final part of this, the final piece of the puzzle, the most underrated, was the sheer power of consistency. Eat your heart out, UK governments, being replaced every 4 or 5 years. China's EV strategy wasn't just a bright idea from 2020. It was the result of a plan made more than 2.5 decades earlier. 2020 was just the year it all locked in with a clear long-term vision. The government had set a target for NEVs to hit 20 to 25% of the market by 2025. Incredibly, I think we all know they didn't just meet that target, they just blew straight past it, years ahead of schedule. NEV sales approaching 50% in 2025, not 20 to 25. Well, this unwavering commitment sent a powerful signal to the market. Go big on EVs because the government's got your back. It gave companies the confidence to pour billions into new factories and R&D to become world leaders. Now, contrast that with the West. In Europe, incentive programs were a messy patchwork. German rebates were generous, then suddenly cut. France had its own system nobody understood. The UK repeatedly shrank its main grant before finally scrapping it. And look at the EV mandate. Original date 2035, then it's brought forward to 2030, then put back again 2035, then brought forward to 2020. Who knows where it is now? Now that the EU has eased rules once again, we might follow suit. To be fair, China also had a few tweaks in its subsidies over the years, but the direction of travel never changed, never wavered. In the West, this policy whiplash and flip-flop created massive uncertainty. It's tough to make a multi-billion-dollar investment when the rules can change after every election or even between elections. In my pre-budget forecast video that was launched earlier in November, entitled What EV Drivers Can Hope For, my number one wish was for stability in the EV industry. Interesting. Well, the result of this divergence is playing out right now. In the first half of 2025, final steps of the master plan fell into place and Chinese brands nearly doubled their European market share, up to 5.1%. BYD sales in Europe exploded, with some reports showing year-on-year growth of over 300% for certain periods. Now, of course, those huge percentages are easier when starting from a small base, but the trend was undeniable. Meanwhile, legacy giants saw their market share shrink. The BYD Dolphin, a car comparable in many ways to a VW ID3, was being sold in the UK for a significantly lower price, making it a very compelling alternative. Well, the story isn't over. The West's finally waking up. In 2024, the EU announced it would impose new anti-subsidy duties on the Chinese EVs, which, on top of the existing 10% tariff, could push the total rate for some brands towards 40%. But this is a reaction, this is a retaliation, not a strategy. It risks higher prices for consumers and a potential trade war. In a clever pivot, some Chinese brands, they've already started focusing on plug-in hybrids. They weren't hit with the highest tariffs. And they've seen their sales continue to climb. Do you ever wonder why there are so many sales? Others have entered into joint ventures the other way round, with China setting up factories now in Europe. That instantly gets around the tariffs and opens up the whole of the European market. Well, what do you think? Can Western automakers ever truly catch up, or was the race decided way back in 2020, possibly 2000? Let me know your comments below. And if you found this breakdown useful, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. So in conclusion, what's all this mean for you and your next car? It actually means that the global auto industry has been fundamentally redrawn. China's meticulous planning, its command of the supply chain, and its unwavering political will have created an EV powerhouse with incredible momentum. They're not just the world's factory anymore, they're rapidly becoming its leading auto engineers, taking over from Germany. Well, tariffs might slow the tide a little bit, but they won't stop it. Chinese brands are already planning to build those factories in Europe, like BYD's plant in Hungary, Chery's plant in Spain, which will allow them to bypass the import duties entirely. For car buyers, the immediate future is messy. Tariffs could keep prices artificially high and limit your choice, and slow down that green transition. But the underlying reality, the cost and the tech advantage that China built, that's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Now, sadly, many in the West and many of my viewers will just dismiss this with, well, he's a China lover, a communist dictator lover. But the facts speak for themselves. China has just overtaken Japan as the world's largest car exporter. And such outright capitalism had little to do with communism. When you look back, the EV race of the 2020s was never a fair fight. It was a competition between a nation with a unified long-term plan and a rabble of countries with fragmented short-term policies, which mainly consisted of, we know what we're doing, we're the experts, leave us to do what we do best, what we've done for almost 100 years. Same old, same old. China played the long game. By the time the West really looked up at the scoreboard, the final outcome was already totally clear. The next decade won't be about who wins the EV race, that's gone, but about how legacy automakers adapt to a world where they are no longer in the driver's seat, a world where their same old market is suddenly brand new, exciting and totally different. Many will not adapt. China already has. I'm Dave.